President of Ukraine is currently in Brussels, holding a series of meetings with European leaders from the coalition of willing countries. World diplomats have gathered to work on a unified position regarding the situation in Ukraine ahead of President Zelensky's talks with Trump, which are scheduled to take place tomorrow. The head of European diplomacy, Ursula von der Leyen, has called this day a time when Ukraine will decide its fate and said that our country needs to become a steel porcupine in order to defend its freedoms. President Zelensky is convinced that it is necessary to work quickly on the final agreement. He seeks real negotiations, which should begin at the current front line. Also, at the press conference in Brussels, the president of Ukraine presented his vision in response to Putin's plan, or the agreement, as Trump calls it, that was reached in Alaska. President Zelensky is convinced that first, the ceasefire must be established, and only then should work on a peace treaty begin. And this is a fundamental point, because Trump supported Putin's idea of a long-term peace treaty without a ceasefire. The second key issue was the territories. Zelensky is not willing to discuss handing over Donetsk region to the occupying country. Here, the Ukrainian Constitution stands in a way as it makes it impossible to surrender or sell the territory of a sovereign state. Overall, Zelensky is only willing to discuss territorial issues during a trilateral meeting between Ukraine, the US, and Russia. Moreover, Ukrainians have not heard any details about the security guarantees that should protect our country from further aggressive actions by Russia. Ukraine's accession to the EU could be part of these guarantees. The president also noted that he is grateful to all of Europe for supporting the Ukrainian people and their desire for a just end to the war.
And the fact that President Trump mentioned a signal about security guarantees. For me, that's much more important than Putin's opinions, because Putin won't provide any security guarantees. Security guarantees mean a strong army. Only Ukraine can provide that. As for funding this army, I believe only Europe can provide that. Weapons for this army. Those can come from our domestic production or European production. But there are some scarce items that only the United States of America has. That's why I consider security guarantees.
Many hands make light work. Zelensky won't be going to meet Trump alone. Tomorrow, the president of Ukraine will head to the US together with European leaders. The following have already confirmed they will accompany the Ukrainian president to the US: NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, French President Emmanuel Macron, Finnish President Alexander Stubb, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Representatives from Poland, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania are also expected. For the Europeans, it is important to discuss security guarantees, support for Ukraine, and further steps toward resolving the war. For Zelensky, this is already his fourth trip to see Trump in the past year, and it is clearly going to be the most tense one yet. Western media report that there will be none of the royal visit symbolism for the president of Ukraine, as there was for the Russian dictator. The procedure will be official. The main challenge remains the pressure on Kyiv to accept conditions that could change our future. Territory, church, and language. Western media have published Putin's demands in Alaska. In particular, the Russian dictator rejects a ceasefire before a peace agreement is reached and demands that Ukraine withdraw its defense forces from Donetsk and Luhansk regions. In exchange, Russia will freeze the front line in the south and is allegedly ready to return small occupied areas of Sumy and Kharkiv regions. Also, according to Putin's wishes, Ukraine must grant legal status to the Russian language and the Russian Orthodox Church and renounce joining NATO. But Moscow is still willing to consider some security guarantees for Kyiv, possibly with a mechanism resembling NATO's Article 5. In return, Putin seeks official recognition from the civilized world of Russia's sovereignty over Crimea and the lifting of at least some economic sanctions. Importantly, this information is mostly based on discussions among European leaders, the United States and Ukraine. And most likely, surprises from the Kremlin are still ahead. Meanwhile, the results of the summit in Alaska have already been commented on live on CNN by the U.S. Special Envoy, Steve Witkoff. Supposedly, Russia has agreed not to fully seize Ukraine, and that's already an outcome. He also added that Moscow has allegedly made concessions regarding 5 of our regions and mentioned, so to speak, reliable security guarantees from America. What exactly that will be is still unknown. In return, Russia will write into its constitution that it will not attack EU countries. Vikov also noted that the issue of exchanging territories under Ukrainian control was not raised at Friday's meeting. But Trump plans to discuss this with Zelensky as soon as tomorrow. You can feel the atmosphere of tomorrow's meeting even through Trump's post on the social network Truth Social. The American president wrote that Ukraine must be prepared to lose part of its territory to Russia. Otherwise, the longer the war drags on, the more land Ukraine will continue to lose, writes the head of the White House. And what do you think about all this? What do you think the outcome of tomorrow's meeting will be? And will the Ukrainian and European leaders be able to convince Trump to protect Ukraine's interests? Share your thoughts in the comments below this video. And don't forget to support us with a like and a subscription if you haven't already.
Putin does not want a ceasefire and prefers a comprehensive agreement to end the war. This was reported by the American outlet Axios, citing their source. During the conversation, Trump said, and I quote, "I think a quick peace deal is better than a ceasefire." Today, Donald Trump called the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. The conversation was initially one-on-one, and then European leaders joined in. Trump invited Zelensky to Washington. According to preliminary information, the meeting could take place as early as Monday. Zelensky said that during the call, they discussed positive signals from the American side regarding participation in guaranteeing security for Ukraine. According to him, it is important that for reliable security guarantees, Europeans are involved together with the U.S. at every stage. Meanwhile, the Council of the European Union is convening an emergency meeting of EU country ambassadors in Brussels following the meeting between Trump and Putin. One of the topics surrounding the meeting between Putin and Trump that was actively discussed on social media was the height of the Russian dictator. In all the videos, he doesn't appear much shorter than Trump. And let's note that Trump's official height is 190 centimeters, while Putin's is only 170. Although in many photos, Putin is even shorter than Medvedev, whose height is 163 centimeters. So those who watched the broadcast of the meeting speculated that Putin was given some kind of special device, like an exoskeleton under his pants from the knees down, so that he wouldn't look even less imposing next to Trump. This is also evidenced by the dictator's strange walk and his shifting from foot to foot during the meeting, which social media users noticed. Sometimes it might even seem like he's walking on tiptoes. It has long been known that at meetings with various politicians, Putin wears specially made platform shoes that add 10 to 12 centimeters to his height. During the so-called Trump summit with Mr. Pooh, the Russian dictator was handed a personal letter. According to Reuters sources, it was written at the White House by the First Lady of the United States, Melania Trump. She mentioned the abducted Ukrainian children there. Trump personally handed the Kremlin leader a letter from his wife during their talks. The detailed contents have not yet been disclosed. Notably, the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant for Vladimir Putin precisely because of the illegal deportation of Ukrainian children.